The end of the year is rapidly approaching, and I'm looking around at my bench, and there's way too many things I've half worked on, less than half worked on. And I really want to get things cleaned off. Not everything, but like a lot of the castings that have just been sitting around for way too long. This was one that I took apart. I took it apart, stripped it, and that was it. A long time ago. This thing's probably been on my bench stripped down for poof, easily 6 months, 8 months maybe. Now I've wanted to mess around with the bone shaker for a while. I really enjoy doing stuff with the bone shaker casting. And so I wanted to experiment with some things on this one. It's not a super fancy build or anything. It was more just messing around, trying some things I've wanted to try, see how they work. Things for future builds, in effect. So this footage, you see me taking it apart, that was shot months ago. And then it sat. It got stripped, but then it just sat for the longest time because other things would come up. I finally brought it back out and decided, well, I'm going to fill in the roof. I'm going to close off those backside windows. And there you see the tape. I'm just fastening it down a little better. I'm able to do the inside JB weld on both the roof and the backside windows. And then I wanted to fill in the bed of this too and smooth it off as if it had a bed cover on it back there. So that's the goal, and that's getting out the JB weld, and this will be highly accelerated. I think this is 5 times normal speed, if I remember correctly. And so a big part of filling in things like the roof and the side windows from the inside is making sure you get the JB weld, or whatever you're using, into all the corners. You don't want any gaps. You may get a little air pocket here or there, but you don't want them. You want to eliminate that as much as you possibly can. So there I am just throwing all the JB Weld in because I love using JB Weld. What better way to go out of the year than using JB Weld? So I fill that stuff in, and the bed I couldn't fill in from the outside, or from the inside, excuse me. So I had to fill it in from the outside, which the result is it's never going to be as smooth as the other way of doing it. But I knew what I wanted to do. And part of the reason, and you saw this in the description for the video, is I decided I was going to use the Nightmare Before Christmas decals on this. I almost said Nightmare on Elm Street. That'd be a totally different twist to this casting. But once I had these filled in, I did have to mix up a little bit more JB Weld there for the back. And I was happy with kind of how it was looking at this point. I knew I still needed to use spot putty, but it's like, okay, let me drill and tap this thing. Get it ready. I am going to follow through on this one. And I'm not going to set it aside again. There's too many things already set aside. And, I look at some of these things sitting on the bench for too long, and I start to feel guilty that they're sitting there. And it's also very distracting and frustrating. So I thought, well, let me clear out some of these. And this bone shaker's one of them. So drilled it and tapped it and, went through the usual process on it. And, yeah, it's always fun, the drilling and tapping part. Used 256 screws. The posts on the bone shaker, very easy to work with. No problem at all. Easy to drill, easy to tap, and then throw screws on. I always, when I'm working on these, throw crappy screws in. Ones that I've used before. They're like my paint screws. They're like the work screws. And so I reuse these on multiple castings. And then when I do the finish assembly, I use nice screws. So here's the Bondo spot putty. And again, I just go over it. You can see how rough the bed is. I have sanded that down because there were some little peaks in it and stuff. So I did sand it down as best I could, or at least to reveal more of the areas that needed to be filled in better. And then as nice as the JB Weld looks on the roof, I do like still going over that with a real thin skim coat of the spot putty. And again, I will sand a lot of that away. Also the side windows, the back side windows, I wanted to fill in. I thought it'd be a better look for this one. And again, I'm not doing anything exceptionally fancy on this. This is more just of an experimentation kind of thing. I want to see how some of these things go, how easily or how difficult they are. And even something with the decals, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But because I had filled in the bed, I have to cut that fuel tank off the back, the part where it sticks up into the bed. And I'm using the X-Acto razor saw for this. You're going to see me do something here in a minute that's one of those don't do this at home things. Because the razor saw, this is the thin, really sharp. They don't call it a razor saw for nothing. This part, yeah, don't do this at home. It looks like I'm going really fast. I'm going very slow, as you can actually see in this normal speed section. And once that starts to give, I just fold it up. I don't cut all the way through because you can very easily cut yourself with that razor saw. So that part now is ready to go. You know, it fit-wise, it's perfect. Now the body, there's the primer, there's the lacquer, and then once it was all done, there's the clear lacquer that went over everything. All rattle can. It had been painted at this point, and you see me putting the decals on. These are set, at least this set, is Second Chance Redlines, the Nightmare Before Christmas decals for a Silverado. I ended up getting a couple sets of those because I like the look of them. And I thought, well, let me drop those onto this bone shaker. You know, it's Christmas time. I've done 2 other Christmas builds. Why not a third? And so I didn't go through all the detail on that of what I ended up doing, all the decals, but you'll see it here in a minute. The interior, the chrome interior, I ended up painting that white. So I wanted to get the chrome off of there. I don't do anything super fancy with that either, as you'll see. But about the decals, one other comment. One of the things I wanted to experiment with on this was making taillight decals for the bone shaker. They're a very simple design, and it just seemed like you can knock out some decals pretty easily for it. They're 2-part decals, and so it's insanely tedious when you go to apply these tiny decals. And I was doing it the other night while Derek over at Honest Diecast was doing a live stream. And so it was kind of like nice having just that talking in the background to kind of calm everything down as I'm trying to put these little tiny decals on. And then he ended his live stream. So I could go back to screaming as I was trying to apply them. But anyhow, they worked out well. It's a very basic design. It just kind of confirmed what I wanted to do for future bone shakers. Just have that added detail of decals for the taillights. Because it's an area that can look really crappy very easily. So there you see where I'm at. I didn't put a lot of detail. Like the exhaust, I blackened in the exhaust pipes and that kind of thing. Didn't put detail or Nuln oil on there to separate the headers, that kind of thing. No. I wanted it to be very basic. For a few minutes, I thought about recasting the skull on the front, making it more round, like Jack in the movie. And then I thought, well, that's just going to be funky. So I didn't go that route. So this was kind of just experimenting and trying odds and ends on one of these year-end bench cleaning builds. It was fun. I ended up throwing Samed wheels on it, as you'll see here in a minute. You may notice this angle is a little different. That's how old this footage was. I've changed the angle that I shoot things on the turntable at. I may go back to this angle because I kind of like that look. Here's the one I'm using now. And I think I might go back to the other angle. But anyhow, you see the decal set. And I'm pretty happy. There's the taillight decals that I created for the bone shaker for this. And I'm really happy with that. The side doors decals, almost like a little vignette look to them, are actually from 2 sets of the Silverado decals, because there was only one of those images on each decal. And so, I don't know, I think it turned out pretty well. I like how the bed filled in, like a bed cover on there. Looks okay. All in all, I'm pretty happy with it. So I hope you like this build too. I didn't detail the skull on the front. I left that like raw bone shaker look. I thought it might distract if I detailed it because it doesn't look like Jack, if that makes any sense. So here are the rest of the glamour shots. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this build. Everyone, Merry Christmas. Stay safe and healthy out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.